CLS. So from here, let us say I have a method called main. So here I'll try to create my object of access mods. Obj is equal to new access mods. Fine. Now I have made everything my public here, right? So which means I should be able to access that obj dot, let us say if I you can see this I. So here I am able to access that I. Now if I dot, so I have some other method called print line, right? So I am able to access that. Can you see this one? Which means this is a public and you can access. Now let us make it as private here. Let us don't give anything here, and now let us see what happens. Now here when I say obj dot print line, see here you can see the it has blue, right? Which means there is nothing being mentioned here, and sometimes you will not be able to call this up. But sometimes what your Eclipse does, your Eclipse will allow it to public, right? Because I haven't mentioned anything, it should be actually in Java it should get to private, but here what happening is I am again trying to call it as in the same package. So sometimes it will take it as a protected. We'll understand what is protected. Fine. So for that, don't leave anything as it is, but just if you want to make a private, just make it as private. Fine. Now you can see an error here, right? It says private variables is not accessible. Fine. It says not visible. So that is how we change the scope of this to private. Fine. So that is nothing but your private. Now, so what is now let us move on. So that is private and public. Now what is protected? Protected is again nothing but protected is again nothing but if you define protected for a class variable or method, right? Now so you can access those variables and classes or those variables and methods only in the same package, and you will never be able to access them in across the package. So that is nothing but your protected. Fine. Fine. Then default again I'll explain you this default in final, because we in current market we give default for class and variables and methods very rarely, but in the case of default we use final. I'll explain you what is final, then you will understand what is default. Fine. Now so these are nothing but access modifiers. So again there is one more point, that you can have only one access modifier at a time. Is that correct? I can have either public, or I can have either private, or either I can have either protected. I cannot say that it's a public private variable, right? No. So that is one point, which is nothing but access modifier can be used once at a time. Now let's go to second part of access modifier, which is nothing but non-access modifier. Fine. And again non-access modifier again changes the accessibility or some property of your variable or class or method. Now in that, first one is final. Now what is final? So final here it said we can apply final for class, we can apply final for variable, and we can apply for final for methods and variables, he said. So this is the only token or access modifier which can be applied for all. Now let us first see what. So if you apply final for class, what happens? Now first let us see if you apply final for class variable, what happens. Now you have heard about constants in C++, right? C++ we have something called constant. So if you mention constant, you will never be able to change the value of that constant. Am I right?
Yeah.
In the same way, in Java we don't have something called constant, we have something called final. Right? Final is nothing but your non-access modifier, which will make your variable a constant. Now so variable, applying final to variable, we know that we are making something as constant, but what is the final, or what is that if you apply for class? What happens if you apply final for class? Any idea? So now here if you apply final for class, this class will become like, you will never be able to inherit this class in other classes. What is inheritance? We'll see in oops. Fine. So that is nothing but your final. So if you apply this class to, if you apply this final to class, you will never be able to inherit this. And if you apply the final to variable, that will become a constant. In the same way, if you apply the final to method, so it will become constant to the method, which means you will never be able to override and overload your method. We'll see what is a overriding and overloading a method in upcoming classes, which is oops. Fine. And again, if you are making final for a method variable, which means again inside method you are defining some constants, right? Right. Now we have something called abstract. So you will be learning this abstract non-access modifier in oops. I'll explain this abstract in oops, right? So here just remember that abstract is something which is nothing but a non-access modifier. Fine. Fine. Then next one we have something called strict FP. So what is strict FP? Strict FP is nothing but you can apply this strict FP in class or a method. Now what is strict FP is, if you apply a non-access modifier for called strict FP, which means in this class or a method, whenever you are doing something, some operation on, let us say, float numbers, you know, we have learned about floating, right? Floating is nothing but a decimal values. So strict FP will create a rule that whenever you are working with decimals, it will allow only 6 decimals for you, right? And let us say this strict FP is defined in JVM. Let us say in your JVM, let us say it is allowing you to save 12 digits decimal. So then your class variable, your class and methods can be applied for 12 decimals of that, right? So you can work up to 12 decimals. I mean, if you make your class or method strict FP, and if you are trying to, you know, do something with 14 decimals, it is not possible, which means your strict FP will restrict your class or method to that number of decimals. Fine. Fine. So then we have something called transient. See, this transient, you will understand what is a transient in files. When we come to file input output, you will understand this word. And synchronized, you will understand this in threading, right? Synchronized, native, volatile, you will understand all these topics when we actually come to files and threading. Fine. Anyways, at that point I'll remind you about the synchronized, transient, volatile and all. Fine. Now the last one we have is static. Again, what is static? Static here can be applied for class and can be applied for variables and can be applied for methods. So what is this static? Let us see what is this static. Again, in Java we have something called, we have two topics called, first one is something called object, variables or methods, and second thing we have something called class, variables and methods. Fine. Now let us see what is an object variable or method and what is a class variable or method. Now here again let us take upon the same class, right? Now here, so now in all, let us say all are public. I have something called a variable which is I is equal to 10, which is public, and I have a function called print line which is again public, right? Now in order to access a variable and a method outside the class, what should I do? I should create an object. Am I right?
Object.
Without creating an object, can I access this? I cannot, right? So now I can access this in this way, which is like I can say that let me take this as a string. Let us say this is something called string, some s is equal to something called hello. Fine. So let me say here I can say system, I can print obj.s. Am I right? I can do this. So I'm calling it through, yes, and I can write one more thing called obj.println, right? So I am accessing different variables or different attributes and methods from object. So accessing different variables and methods from object is nothing but your object variables and methods. Fine. Now let us see what is class variable and method. If you make you understand this, you will understand why I am talking about object. Anyways, in Java, whatever you want to do, you have to do it using object, right? but you can do some, you have one more very important thing, which is nothing but class variable. Now what is a class variable? Let us see here. Now let me make these things as public static string, and here public static void. Now what I have done, I have applied a token called access modifier called static string, right? And I have applied something called static println. So now when you apply a static for a variable or for a method, it will become, so now let us see how we can access. First thing is, you can access either from object. Now let us say I don't have this object, right? Which means you can access your variable or method directly from class. My class name is access mods, right? If I click on dot, see, you can see access s, right? And you can see something called print. Am I right? I am accessing those things directly. Now if I say sys out of access mods dot yes, I can directly print it out, and I can say access mods dot println. So am I creating any object here? No. I'm accessing those variables and methods directly using the class name. So now this variable and this method are called as your class variables and methods. So in order to make your variable or method a class variable or method, you have to use something called static. So that's where we use static. Fine. We use something called static variable and static method. So that can be applied for either variables or methods, which will make your scope of S nothing but you can access directly from access modifier class itself, which is access modifier dot s and access mods dot print. Fine. Now let us see what are the scopes here. Fine. In access modifiers, you should understand something called scope. Now let me give something called string some s1 is equal to something called how are you. Fine. So I have this string. Now so basically, what is mean by scope? Scope here is nothing but the reach of a variable or method with respect to the class or an object. It's a simple definition of a scope. Now whenever I define anything, so here let us say you have started all your methods from here, right? And you have something called variables here. Now whenever you define a variable out of all the methods, which means these variables, right, this scope of this variable s is across your class, which means in this class you can use this variable across any method. If I have method println, I can use it directly. If you have some other method, you can use even this variable directly. Fine. Which means the scope of s became throughout your class. Now the second scope is like this. If you have something called another variable which you are defining in a println, which means you are defining it in something called method, right? So you can have the scope of this inside a method. You are not supposed to use outside this method. Fine. Now see here, I can I give in this way? Can I do this? See, I have already declared my string called s. I am again defining this, which means here the scope comes, which means I have this s, but the scope is my class. I again have a same name variable s, but the scope of this is here. Now if I try to print something called s, so which variable will be printed? Any guess? So whenever you try to access the variable, it will see for the nearest scope. What is the nearest scope of s? Yes, nearest scope is this, so it will never go to this. Fine. You understood this? So now let us run this up. Let us run this up. Let us say I have a main method. I'll call something called println. Fine. I'm calling this method. Now let us run this and see what happens. So if I run this up, see, it is printing how are you, am I right? Which means it is going for a nearest one. Anyways, I have two variables, which is s and s, but whenever you do something here, it will go for the nearest one. Now let me print my s here. If I print s, what happens? Let us see. So first it called this method, it went in, right, and it printed yes, which is near to that. It came back here and then it is printing again s. But here whenever I am saying yes, so the nearest s is something which is a class variable, right? So that's why first it printed hello, how are you, and then hello. Fine. Now let us see what happens if I do this here. Can I do this here? Anyways, let us remove the static content. Anyways, that doesn't matter, right? Because if you say, you will understand what is this in upcoming classes. Let us say I am doing something here in here itself. I say, let us remove this method. Now you have something called yes and s, right? Now let us call that function here, which is ob access mod obj is equal to new access mods, right? From here I am calling a method called print line. Fine. So here if you go to this print line, what I am doing, let me remove this static again. Fine. So all are my object variables and methods. Nothing is a class variable. Now here when I say print line, when I run this class, what happens? If I run this class again, it will print you how are you, right? Because here what I am doing is I am printing that variable. Now let me make it as this dot yes. So what does this dot s means? Now let me run this first and explain what is this. If I run, what is being printed? Can you see the difference here? The difference is when I remove this, which means here I am looking for something which is nearest to that. Fine.
Nearest. Oh.
But when I say this dot s, which means I am seeking something. See, can you see here? When I click on this, it is highlighting this one. Can you see this?
Okay.
Which means this is nothing but a token in Java, which is referring to the class 1. So when I say this dot s, which means I want to access the global variable of class and not the local variable. You understood that? So that's why when I try to run this up, it is saying hello. It is not saying something called how are you, it is saying something called. So that is where we understand the concept called this. So this is nothing but your current instance of class. Fine. So that is how we define what is the scope of a variable across and scope of a this across. Fine.
What is this? Like,
this
what
is a
do you
keyboard.
call it?
No, this is a direct keyboard. So this is a, see, you can see this as a maroon,
It
right?
doesn't come under access modifier.
No. This is not an access modifier. This is a separate token. This is a separate token in Java. Fine. This doesn't come under anything like access modifier. No. This always represents the current instance of a class. I created one object right here. I created one object called access mods, right? Now whenever I say this, which means it is actually looking at current instance. Now anyways, you will understand this in our future classes anyways, right? As I'm explaining you the scope, that's why I just gave you what is the scope I'm using here. So this is very important that you have to know this. But anyways, while learning OOPS, you will understand what is this. Because when I explain what is a class and what is an object in upcoming classes, so anyways, I know that you know what is a class and object, but anyways I have to, it is my job to make you understand, well, what is a class and object, so that you will be having in next class probably you will understand what is a class and what is an object. Fine. Fine. So these are nothing but your access modifiers we have. And don't get worried, because access modifiers, you have to know access modifiers here at this point, because whenever I am writing like static or whenever I am writing final in future classes, you should understand that yes, these are access modifiers which I am writing. Fine. Right. Now there is one more point here. When I said access modifiers, I said you can use only one access modifier at a time. Am I right?
Yeah.
but you can use more than one non-access modifier at a time. Let us see how.
Oh, okay.
See here I said public, let us say when I said static here, right? I'll take again an example of the same, right? When I said static here, which means my scope of variable s is the class, but I can use it outside, am I right? Which means I can use it like this, access mods dot yes, am I right?
Yeah.
Now let me make it as final again, static final, which means I can access this variable s directly using class, and also I am making it as final, right? Which means I am not supposed to change the value. Let us see here, let me change it out like I'm fine. See here, can you see here there is an error?
Yeah.
What it says? It says the final field access modifier cannot be assigned. It says as this is a final, you are not supposed to change that. So that is nothing but your final. Am I right? So here what I am doing, I am using two different non-access modifiers called static and final, which is here you can see here I have final and static. Am I right? So here it means that you can use a combination of non-access modifiers, and you can use more than one non-access modifier in Java. Fine. So
Okay.
this is a concept of access modifiers in Java. But anyways, you will be learning transient, synchronized, and native and all when we come to files. Fine. Fine. So those are nothing but access modifier. Now let's move on. Let's move on to something very important topic called operators. Let us see what are the operators in Java. Now let us see what is an operator. First thing is the definition of operator. So what is an operator? Operator is nothing but if you do a simple thing, like if you do something like a plus b, let us say a plus b, I have something called, if I say int x is equal to a plus b, which means I am trying to add two things, right? And I'm trying to save it on x. Am I right? Can you see this? When I'm doing
Yes,
int
yes.
x is equal to a plus b, which means let us say a is an integer 10 and I'm assigning 15, which means there are two integers 10 and 5 and I'm adding it. So the plus is nothing but an operand, right? The plus is nothing but an operand. What I'm doing, I'm doing 10 plus 15, which means I'm performing some action between two integers, which is nothing but addition operation, and the result is saved in x. So this is nothing but an operation, and this is nothing but an operand. So we have different operands with which we can do different operations. So those things are nothing but our operators, right? Now in Java we have anyways I hope you know different operators, but let us see what are the different operators we have. We have something called assignment operator. Again, what is an assignment operator? Assignment operator is nothing but you know, so whenever we do something called int, we did this one, right? So this is nothing but your assignment operator. Fine. Assignment operator is mainly used to assign some values or assign some values into something. Now, when I say int j is equal to 10, which means my j is of type int and I want to assign some value called 10 to j. So this equal to is nothing but your assignment operator. Fine. Now let us go to the next one. You understood assignment operator? Anyways, it's a very simple one. You know, I don't have to explain much on this, right? Assignment operator is simply is 1 equal to. 1 equal to is your assignment operator. Fine. Now let's move on to next operator, which is arithmetic operator.
Even double equal to will be there, no,
No,
Srinath?
no, that will come to equality. I'll
Oh, equality.
equality,
Okay, okay.
because that is something which is used to compare two things. Fine. So whenever we are doing comparison, you know, I'll show you how to do that, but that comes under equality operators and not assignment, right?
Equal. Okay.
Assignment is again, which means like I am assigning something to something else,
Assigning something.
right? So
Yes.
there you will not get a double equal to. Fine. Now
Okay.
next one, let
Got
us
it.
see what is an arithmetic operator. Now let us take examples here again directly. Let me just close this and close all. and we'll create a new. We don't need this now. So those are assignment. So let us take up what is arithmetic operator. Arithmetic operators are nothing but your plus, right, minus, multiplication, divided by, and your mod. So these are your arithmetic operators. Fine. Now what is plus? Plus is nothing but plus is used to add two numbers. When I say plus, I can have like this. I can have something called, I can add two numbers like plus 3 dot something else. Fine. So here what I am doing, I am adding two numbers. So that is nothing but your plus, arithmetic plus. Fine. And minus is used to subtract two numbers, right? And multiplication is used to multiply two numbers, and division is used to divide two numbers. Fine. And what is modulo? So let us talk about division first. Division, here let us say if I am doing like this, 9 divided by 3. So what is the when I say int x is equal to 9 divided by 3, let us create a project. Let us do that here itself, Java project, and let's as operators. Right now let us create a class here, new class. Let us say operts some class. So now here, now let us see. Now when I say int x is equal to something like 9 divided by 3, like, so now let us print my system.out of x. X is, again I have to convert it into integer. You will be learning this thing in upcoming classes anyways. Like, now here what I am doing, I am doing some. So are you able to see this? You want me to increase the font? Can you see this?
No, no.
Okay, fine.
No, that is fine.
Fine. That's fine. Just open about. Okay. Now here what I am doing is I am trying to divide these things. So which means 9 divided by 3. What is the what will you get? Let us say 9 divided by 3 will give you something, right? Let us run this up.
3. Yeah.
It gives 3, right? Which means it's a when you take up in this way, which is like, I can show you in this way. How can I show? Yeah, let me take new slide, and let me just open it up, and let me take a pointer here. Right, you remember this, right? You remember this concept, which is 3 divided by 9, you will get a 3 here. Am I right? So that is nothing but your 9 divided by. Now when I say modulo here, what does it mean? Let me run it up. So what is the modulo you got it? We are getting. So let us say I am trying to get 2 here. So what happens? See, it will give me 1. So now this mod is nothing but the remainder of this, which means again. So when I run it up with 2, right, you will be getting something called, let us say I am dividing it with 2, right? Let us say 2 fourths are 8, right, and I am getting remainder 1. So this is nothing but your modulo. Fine. So this is nothing but your, so always when you do something called mod, it will give you the remainder of it. So when if I say 3, it will give me 0, right? So that is nothing but your modulo. So that are the arithmetic operators we have in Java. Any doubt in this?
No.
Now let's move on. Let's move on to next topic, next operator, which is nothing but a unary operator, right? So we have these unary operators again, which is a plus, you have minus, you have plus plus, you have minus minus, and you have something called not. So these are nothing but your unary operators. Let us see what is a unary operator. So even we have something called arithmetic. In arithmetic operators we have seen plus minus, right? What does plus do? Plus will add two numbers. So again you can use this plus in the same way. Let us see how we can use. Let me take something called, let me create a class like unary ops operator. Now let us see how it is done. So here let me take an example of int I is equal to 10, let us say. Fine. So previously we have seen something called I is equal to, when I say 10 plus 5. Here my intention is to add again the same 10 with 5. Am I right? Now if I do system out and if I print it up to string, alright, so let us see what I'll be getting this. I'll get 15. Am I right? So my intention here was adding the same I with some other integer. So this can also be done in this way. When I say I is equal to plus 5, right, which means I am using something called unary plus. So this is nothing but unary plus. Again, if I run it up, you will get the same value. Can you see this? I'm sorry, I plus is equal to 5. Fine. Syntax, what is it? Let me take it as I is equal to I plus 5. Why is it not accepting this? It is giving 15. When I say I is equal to plus 5, it should accept and give something called 15. I don't know why it is giving this. Fine, let me do this one. It should give me this unary plus is I is equal to I plus 1. It gives 11. But basically I don't know why it is doing in this way. But basically if you do something like I is equal to I plus 1, fine. Now let us try this in console. Try this out in console, okay? Console, like where your JDK latest one is there, which means if I say int I is equal to 10, see, it is accepting something called plus 1, right? Am I right? I am not getting any error here. So which means I should get my I value addition 1, which means I is equal to 10 plus 1, which is 11. I should get a value called 11, but it is overriding with 1. But anyways, there is some problem in here, but doesn't matter. But unary plus is nothing but, this is the syntax. You have an integer defined. When you say I is equal to plus 1, which means you are adding I with I plus 1. Fine. This is syntax. And again you have something called unary minus. Again this is the same thing. When you do something called I is equal to I minus 1, again here, so which means we're trying to subtract 1, or if you say 5, you are trying to subtract 5 from 5 I. So that is nothing but your unary minus. So we call this as unary plus. We have to call always this as unary plus, fine, and not the normal plus. That is a unary plus and unary minus. But anyways, we won't be using this much. We will be using these three mostly actually. Now let us see what is a plus plus. Plus plus is, is an increment by 1, right? It is nothing but an increment by 1. Now this you have to understand very keenly. Let us say I am doing something called I is equal to I plus plus. What does it mean? It means I am incrementing the I value with 1, right? When I run this up, you can see, come on, nothing. I don't understand why this is killing me up. Maybe I have created some wrong program anyways, some wrong project anyways, and it is not allowing me to do all those things anyways, right? But basically if you do this, right, okay, let me create one more project. Let me just check it out. I don't want to. Let me create something called dynamic web project and operators 1. Okay, and let me create a class here called unary ops. Now here let me do the same thing. Here I have something called int I is equal to 10, I is equal to I plus plus, okay, and I want to print this with sys out of integer dot toString dot toString of I. Now let us run this as a Java application. Come on, this is not what is accepted. Anyways, I don't know why it is happening. My time is bad today. Anyways, I don't know why all these things are happening, right? Anyways, let me explain here itself, right? I don't want to show some drastic results here. Now the plus plus is used to increment your value by 1. Fine. So here when we say int I is equal to 10, right, and if I say I some I plus plus, right, which means I am incrementing this by 1. So under this we have two things. First one is we have something called post increment, right, and we have something called pre increment. Here post increment is nothing but when I say int x is equal to I plus plus, so what will be my x here? Any guess? Sorry, no, it won't be 11. It is like first I am assigning my I and then I am incrementing, which means it will be 10, right, and then my I will become 11. So that is nothing but a post increment. And when I do plus plus I, which means I am first incrementing my I and then my assigning. So now it is pre increment. You understood these two? So that is nothing but your post increment and pre increment. And this holds good again for same minus minus I. Again minus minus is nothing but I am decrementing my value with 1. Fine, which is nothing but minus minus is post, which is post decrement. Am I right? I am first making one minus 1 and then assigning something, and post decrement is nothing but I minus minus. Fine. So what happens here, it will first assign the value and then it will decrement. So those are nothing but unary operators. Now we have something called not. What is this not? Or not, we can also call it as logical not, right? We call it as logical not, and this is always used in this way. Let us say I have something called boolean, right, and when I say, let us say boolean, I have j is equal to true, right. Now when I say what not j, right, not j, I'm sorry, not j, this means it's false, right. This not is used as a logical not. You understood this, right? So that is nothing but your unary not, which is logical not. Fine. And we'll be seeing this not in our control statements called if not j. You can write in this way, right?
So can we use this with boolean variables only?
Not can be used not only with boolean variables. You can basically the output should be boolean. So that's the main point. I can also say this, if I is equal to 10, I can do this, which means I am comparing my I whether it is 10 or not. So my logical output will be, let us say it can be true or false, right? Am I right?
True or false,
and I'm doing not on that, which means it's a complete result set on which I am doing not. I can also use this in the way. So we'll understand this when we come to control statements anyways. But not can be applied only for booleans, but boolean can be of any form. Again, I is equal to 10 is something which is returning either true or false. Am I right?
Yeah.
So this is again a boolean. The whole set is boolean and I am doing not here. Fine. So this is nothing but your logical not. So these are nothing but your unary operators. Fine. Now let's move on to next one, which is equality operator. So we were talking about something called equality operator, right? Now let us see what is an equality operator. So here
relational
again,
operators are there before that.
I'm sorry.
Relational operators are there before. Oh, equality. Oh, sorry,
Yeah, you will get all you will get all these things. Anyways, you have relational, you have conditional.
No, I didn't see it.
Acha. Okay, fine. Okay, let me first explain the operators. We have something called arithmetic, assignment, unary, you have equality, you have relational operators, you have conditional operators, you have instance of operator, you have bitwise operators, and you have shift operators. Fine. So you'll be learning maximum possible operators in Java anyways. Yeah, you're right anyways, but conditional operator will come after relation only. I'll show you why. Fine, I'll show you why.
Okay.
Now let us first see what is an equality operator, right? And in Java, you know that there are two equality operators, which is double equal to or not equal to. Fine. Double equal to is nothing but if I write if I, let us say I have something called int I is equal int I is equal to 10, right? So this is nothing but assignment operator. If I say if I is equal to 10, then do something. Am I right? So this is nothing but your equality, and equality operators are used to compare two things. Here what I am doing, I am comparing two integers, which is I and 10. Am I right? So that is nothing but your comparison. So these are nothing but your equality operators, and double equal to will check whether it is I is same as the value whichever you are checking, and not equal to is nothing but whether you are checking whether it is not equal to the value which you want. Fine. So these are two equality operators. We call them as equality operator. Any doubt in it? You have any doubt in this?
No.
No, fine. So let's move on to next thing called relational operators now. So again in Java we have same relational operators which we had in C, which is nothing but greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. So these are your relational operators. Now again we use all these relational operators to check or to compare between two entities. Again, if I do something called if 10 is greater than 4, let us say, what I am doing, I am trying to check something here. Am I right? Which means 10 should be, I mean, let me take it as int x, some int x, and I am checking whether x is greater than 4, right? If I say x is equal to 5, which means 5 is greater than 4 is true, and it will do something. If I say 4, which means 4 is greater than 4, no, which is false. Am I right? So that is nothing but you are checking something whether the first entity is greater than the second entity or not. So that is how we use a relational operator called greater than. So this is greater than, and less than is again something which is we can use by angular bracket, start angular bracket, which is nothing but x less than 4. When I say something called 2, which means 2 is less than 4, which is true, and it will come and do something, right? So that is nothing but less than, and greater than is greater than or equal to is something again which will check whether your number is greater or equal to. When I say 4 again here, which means it is greater or equal to. It can be either greater than or equal to. So your 5 will also give you the true result, and also 4 will give you the true result, because you are also checking something equal. Fine. And you have something called less than or equal to. Again, your x should be either less or equal to. When I say 2, right, my 2 is less than 4 is correct, and if I take 4 again, which means again I am checking less than. Anyways, if you take less than, this is false, but you have something called equal to, which means here it is making your condition true, it will come in. Fine. So these are nothing but your conditional, relational operators. Fine. Now let us move into conditional operator, and we'll spend some more time in conditional operator, and which is very important here. So we have the following conditional operators. What are they? We have something called conditional AND operator. We have something called conditional AND operator and OR operator. So these are the two conditional operators we have in Java. Fine. So now let us see what actually it does. So we have something called truth table. You know what is a truth table, right? So we have something called truth table. Let us write a truth table. So it starts from in this way. Like, let us say I have an entity A, right? I have something called B, and I am taking something called A and A and B, right? Now here let's come up now. So this is a truth table I am writing. Fine. So let us say my A, you know this, right? Let us say my A is true, and B is true. Fine.
Yeah.
Then my A and B will be true. Now let us say my A is true and B is false. It will give me A and B will always be false. And let us say your A is false and your B is true. It will give me false. It is false and false will give you false. So this is your truth table, and I'm applying something called AND. So basic thing here is for AND, at least, not at least, both the conditions should be true. Am I right? So this is nothing but your conditional AND. Again, you can use this in this way. So the example will be like this. Let us say I have int x is equal to 10. Fine. Here I am saying if let me take something called, let me just write it down and you can say whether you understood or not. Let us say I said if x is greater than 11 and x is less than, or let us say x is less than some 1 and x is less than some 21. Now let us understand this. So when I say x is greater than 1, what is the output? X is greater than 1. Is it true?
Yeah.
Yes. So my logical output is true. And here I said x is less than 21. Is my 10 less than 21? Yes. So it will be true. Now what is true and true? True and true will become true, which means the whole condition got satisfied and it will enter into F. You understood this? So that is nothing but you are applying conditional AND operator on this, right? And here, but for conditional operators, you know, the only thing is you can extend to any number. I can also say AND, right? I'll say that x is greater than, let us say, 25, which means it will again append something called AND, right? Now x is greater than 25, is it correct? No, which is false, right? So what happens?
Yes.
The whole thing gets collapsed because one false in AND will give you total false. What happens?
False, yeah.
It will keep your if. Am I right? Let us say you are writing some statements here. Let us say you are writing some statements here like some blah blah, something you are writing, right? Which means if it is false, it won't do this. Now in AND conditional AND condition, you have some exciting thing here. Let us say you are doing something called, let me take it up as 12, right? Now so but I know that when my compiler comes here, I know that I am doing something called AND, right? Which means whenever I am doing conditional AND, each and every condition should be true in order to make it true. Am I right? If at least one fails, the whole set result will be fail. Am I right? So now come here.
Yeah.
So is x greater than 12?
No.
Which means I'll get false, right?
False.
What happens? Our compiler will never go to next conditions again. Even if you have 100 conditions here, it will never go, because at first itself you have some and here itself it became false, which means the whole set will become false. Am I right?
Yeah.
If you get false at the initial stage itself, what is the meaning in going to the next condition, right? I don't have to check any other.
Yeah.
Which means here itself it will conclude that the whole condition is false and it will never do something called never compile these things or run these things, right? So that is one main thing which our JVM compiler does. So this is nothing but your conditional AND. Any doubt in this?
No.
Sure. Now let's continue with the next one, which is a conditional OR. Let me take the same example. I'll take OR. Fine. Now let us write that same truth table here. What is the true and true? True and true, I am applying OR. I said OR in the sense A or B, which means either A or B. So in previous case we said A and B, which means A and
What
B
should?
also should be true, but here I am saying or, which means either a one should can be true. Now true and true will give you true, true and
True.
can you see this? You can see this, right? Now
Yeah, yeah,
now
yeah,
and
yeah.
true and false will give you
True.
true, perfect. And false and true will give you true, right?
True.
And false will give you false, which means in or you should have at least one true. Fine.
One.
Now let us take the same example here and let us see what happens. Let us say I am doing or here. Now here when I did x is greater than 12, is it true or false? It is false, right?
False.
Now in again I said or, right? It will take or anyways. Now it goes to next condition, which is x is less than 21. Is it true?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here as we learned in AND, but in OR if you get one condition true, which means the whole set is true.
True.
We need at least one as true, which means if one is true, it won't check remaining things. It won't check even if you have 100 things. No, doesn't matter at all, because I got true. So it will come out of that because our logical output is true and it will execute your command. So that is nothing but your conditional OR. Any doubts in this?
No.
So this is nothing but your conditional operators, which is AND and OR. Fine. Fine. And let's move on to next one, which is nothing but instance of operator. Fine. Then what is the instance of operator? So this anyways we won't be using, but instance of is nothing but see, let us take an example here itself, right? Let us say we have something called unary operator, right? Let me create one more thing, which is let me create an instance, something called some CLS instance of some class, right? Now here what I'll do, I'll create an object of unary ops obj is equal to new obj, like new array, right? Now here you can check something called obj. You have something called instance of. I can say unary. You understood the syntax whatever I'm writing? I said I created one object called obj, which is an object of unary, right? I'm checking whether object created is instance of my class or not. Instance of is nothing but I am checking whether object I am creating is of type unary ops, and unary ops is nothing but my class. This is my class, right? Hello.
Yeah, yeah. I was muted.
Okay, fine. So now can
Hello?
now can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah. So that is nothing but instance, because this is my class, right? I created instance of something called unary ops here. The object name is obj. So you can check something called instance of. So you have something called instance of direct token. It's a direct token here in Java, where you can check whether the object is of type that class or not. Fine. If that is not of type that, it will come out. So let us take an example. Let us say sys out. I'll print here. Yes, it is. Fine. So let me run this up. If I run this up, it will say Java application. So it says yes, it is. Fine. Now let me take obj instance of. I'll give it as CLS instance of, which is my current class, right? So see what is happening. What I'm doing is I'm taking something else, like actually my obj is an instance of this, right? But I am trying to check which is some other class, right? It won't allow. You understood this, Vishaka? So that's why it always allows something like, now this instance of is used mostly when inheritance. When we go to inheritance, which means my class will be inherited in, let us say, 10 classes. Fine. So at that time you will see this. You will understand this more on when we get into inheritance. Fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is nothing but your instance of operator. So that is an instance of. Now Let us move on to bitwise. Anyways, again bitwise operator is again same as something called conditional operators, but there is a small difference here. Fine. So bitwise operators are like this. So in Java we have bitwise operators called bitwise and, right? We have something called bitwise or, we have something called bitwise XOR, which is cap. I don't know where cap is here. Is it cap? Nope, no. Where can I find cap? Cap, sorry, this cap. Fine. So this is nothing but your bitwise XOR. So this is your bitwise OR, and this is your bitwise AND. Fine. And you have something called nego here again, which is nothing but we make it as not, we call it as not. So this is again same as something called not. You remember this not, right? Right. So these are our bitwise operators in Java. Fine. Again the same table which we have drawn for truth table for something called what is that, conditional operators holds good. When I say A and B, right, it means true and true will become true, true and false will become false. Again the same table will apply, holds good here. Fine. And we again have something called bitwise OR and all. Now so let us stop here, right, because I have to make you understand this bitwise operator very exclusively. I have to take some big example here, and we'll see what is actually bitwise operator and how it is different from our conditional operators tomorrow. Fine.
Okay.
And so we have some two remaining things, which is bitwise, and anyways shift is, shift operator is again that's direct one. Anyways we'll understand this again tomorrow. Fine.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah. Tomorrow can you take 2 hours class like that? It will be
Sunday, right?
easy,
Okay,
right?
okay, fine. Tomorrow let us have 2 hours class.
Weekends, right?
No problem, no problem, no problem. Because every weekend I used to take at least 2 to 3 hours for every batch actually. But the thing is, I'm not
Okay.
able to sit for more time. That is my, that is the only
Oh.
problem. I am not feeling well. That's why I'm not able to sit for more time. Tomorrow, let us do one thing. Let us meet. From tomorrow onwards, let us meet at 7:30 itself, right? Even it will
7:30
be
for me 9.
because
Okay. Oh,
so that we can take some more time, right? Even if it is
sure.
dragging some time, it won't hit. Even we can also meet at 7 o'clock, but it's fine. But you will be anyways. I know every day if I'm getting time, I'll tell you to connect, so that we can connect directly. Fine. And
Okay.
I'll contact our acute soft. If I'm okay with 6 o'clock itself, it doesn't matter for you, right?
6 o'clock. Okay, fine, no
Because the
problem.
thing is, if I start at 6,
Just inform me like before one day, so I will be.
before one day, okay, fine. Because if I'm coming soon from office, there at that time, I can anyways anyways let me
Just tell them to drop me an email so that.
definitely I'll ask them at least half an hour before or 1 hour before. I'll inform you. Okay, not a problem.
Okay.
Because I
Sure.
think you will be checking your mails continuously, right? And anyways you do
Continuously,
check
yes.
during evening times. I'll be informing them at around 5 or 6, right? But from tomorrow, let
Okay.
us meet at 7 or 7:30. Any of these time, right? Either 7 or
Oh,
7:30. Fine.
okay.
So that
Fine.
we have to complete. I think you have to complete core Java by at least next Sunday, right? We have only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
Please.
I'll try to do that. Don't worry, because I'll try to accommodate all these 3 classes for you. Don't worry at all. Fine.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
tomorrow,
Srinath.
no problem. Tomorrow, let us meet at 7. I don't know whether I can take 2 hours tomorrow, because even now I'm not able to sit continuously for 1 hour. That's my I have
Okay,
to.
you can even take a break in between so that
No problem, no problem. I'll try
it
to
is
do that. Okay.
okay.
And can I know what is your time now? What is your time now?
Now it's 10:30 for me.
10:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay, so is it possible if I take tomorrow morning? Like mornings is also okay with me actually. Is that fine with you?
Tomorrow morning in India?
Yep. I mean, no.
Yeah,
Tomorrow
yeah.
morning in a sense, tomorrow evening for you. I mean,
Tomorrow evening. Yeah,
today evening.
yeah.
Okay.
That will be
Okay.
fine.
If it is possible, I'll peep in. I'll just inform Acute Soft Guide so that they'll email you. Okay, and then we can resume. Fine.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay then,
fine.
Vishaka. Okay. Anyways, don't worry.
Yeah,
We'll at
thank
least
you so
complete by next Sunday or Monday. Not a problem. Okay.
Okay,
Fine.
thank you so
Fine then,
much.
Vishaka. Okay. Fine. See you then.
Yeah.
Fine.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.